Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Febia Azahra. I came from 18 MGA class. My student number 1840167. In this time, I will read the journal, economic journal. I choose about economic growth, all the copyright by Google Scholar. The journal I read is entitled Population and Economic Growth. Let me start. Population and Economic Growth by Gary S. Becker, Edward L. Glaser, and Kevin M. Murphy. The growth in the number of humans on this planet has fascinating history. See Colin McAvedy and Richard Jones, 1978. There was negligible net growth during the first 100 or so million years of human habitation. A very low but persistent rate of growth to double the world's population during the period from about 200 BC to 1100 AD, and then a much faster population doubling again during the succeeding 6 centuries. Finally, population began to explode. World population doubled during the 150 years after 1700 to 1.2 billion inhabitants by 1850, doubled again during the next 100 years, and then underwent a remarkable further doubling in just 50 years to the present population of over 5 billion people. This statistic indicate that the history of human population has two major episodes. Until about the 18th century, population was essentially stationary, with spurts of quite slow growth, but radically different trends emerged about around 1750, first in England and America, and then elsewhere. Population began to grow rapidly and at increasing rates to produce an eightfold increase in total world population in under 3 centuries. This has raised new Malthusian fears of the plundering of the planet through excessive demands on natural resources, including potable water and clean air. World incomes followed broadly similar trends, although the growth in the world incomes is poorly documented until modern times. The evidence of mortality and other indicators of economic well-being strongly suggests that per capita incomes experiences little persistent growth prior to modern times. Life was short, nasty, and brutish for practically all the world's population. Per capita incomes during the 19th century, even in most European nations, were probably still below $300 per capita in $1,998, and Europe was the richest continent at that time. Therefore, over the vast majority of historical time, minimal increases in world population went together with negligible world growth in real per capita incomes, and both took off in the 19th century as a rapid growth in per capita income matched the spectacular growth in population. Thomas Malthus argued convincingly that the low and generally rather stationary level of world per capita incomes prior to his time, the end of the 19th century, was causally related to the very slight rates of growth in population. According to the Malthusian model, the causation went in both directions. Higher incomes increased population by stimulating earlier marriages and higher birth rates, and by cutting down mortality from malnutrition and other factors. But higher population also depressed income per capita though diminishing marginal productivity. This dynamic interaction between population and the economic is the heart of Malthusian's model of income and population determination. It implies a stationary population in long-run equilibrium. However, much of what was occurred since the beginning of the 19th century is clearly inconsistent with crucial tenets of the Malthusian analysis. As per capita incomes of many nations grew, fertility did not increase as predicted by Malthus, but eventually began to fall sharply. Although population did grow as incomes grow, its rapid expansions since the 19th century was not sufficient to prevent per capita incomes from continuing to rise. The Malthusian model was abandoned by most 20th century economists, but its principal legacy that higher population tends to reduce per capita income lives on in the neoclassical literature through the assumption of diminishing marginal product to greater labor supply. In the modern view, the growth in per capita income during the past 150 years has little to do with population and rather is caused by the accumulation of human and physical capital and the discovery of new technologies. We believe the relation between population and per capita incomes is far more complicated than that found in either Malthusian or neoclassical and endogenous growth models. Under conditions that tend to prevail in poorer, mainly agricultural economies with limited human capital and rudimentary technology, higher population usually does tend to lower per capita incomes, mainly along Malthusian lines. However, this Malthusian effect would be much weaker in modern urban economies with small agricultural and natural resource sectors. In these economies, the increased density that comes with higher population and greater urbanization, promotion, specialization, and greater investment in human capital, and also more rapid accumulation of new knowledge. This increasing returns from specialization and accumulation of knowledge would raise per capita incomes as population grow and are likely to be far more important than diminishing returns in research constrained sectors. In this short paper, we only sketch out a few features of our ongoing research and on population and growth. We relate population to cities, investment in human capital, and economic growth. Although we do not explore this, our analysis has similar implications for the effects of higher population density on per capita incomes and other variables in different countries and other geographic regions. A. Simple model. In our model, parental heads of dynastic families make three choices. They consume, have children, and invest in the human capital of their children. We ignore physical capital in this presentation. Parents allocate a fixed portion of time between producing current consumption and producing children. The budget constant is T equal L plus NH, where L is time spent in the labor market, N is the number of children, and H is the time spent on producing and rearing each child. Rather than explicitly modeling a utility function and value function for a dynastic family, we sketch such an approach in section 2. We first assume that simpler parental utility function, where C is consumption, Q is the human capital level of each children, and N is the number of children. In particular, we assume a utility function that is separable between current consumption, where E is the constant elasticity of parental utility with respect to number of children. Population enters by affecting the production of consumer and investment goods. Consumer output is assumed to be a function of time spent working by each person and the number of persons. The production of consumption goods might be subject to diminishing returns as population growth because increases in population require the stock of natural resources such as oil or land to be shared over a larger population. However, Greater population levels could produce positive spillovers through greater specialization among workers in the consumer sector. In addition, of the agricultural or more generally the natural resource-based sector, there is an urban or manufacturing sector. Population raise productivity in the urban sector, perhaps primarily by increasing population density or reducing the space between individuals. We do not consider any forces leading to diminishing returns in the urban sector because the knowledge, human capability, and goods produced there are not much dependent on natural resources. Human capital is produced primarily in the urban sector, so that the effect of population on the production of children human capital depends not only on parental time and parental human capital, but also on population destiny. This population destiny has a possible negative productivity effect in the consumption sector and a positive effect in the human capital and knowledge sector. Population destiny has been extensively discussed in urban economics literature. Traditional models by Paul Krugman 1991 and Antonio Ciccione and Robert E. Hall 1996 impassive its effects on production, while a newer literature tends to argue that more densely populated cities speed the accumulation of human capital. We assume generally conservative conditions which are sufficient to ensure that this maximum the marginal benefit of time spent producing current output should be equal to the marginal benefits of the time spent either having more children or raising the human capital of each child. We can eliminate fertility from the middle and right hand side to get an equation that depends only on the optimal investment in each child and population. This simple framework provides a number of additional conclusions. Population destiny will obviously increase parental utility if it has a sufficient positive effect of human capital accumulation, or if the effects on current production is not negative. Since human capital is more important at higher levels of development, greater population is likely to raise per capita welfare in more developed societies. An increase in population destiny may lower the productivity of farming in poorer agricultural economies, so that per capita output there will be lower initially. However, even in these economies, greater density will tend to raise the accumulation of human capital by raising rates of returns of investment in schooling and other human capital. Moreover, families would eventually lower their fertility in population growth, raise rates of return on investment in children, because that would increase the shadow cost of having large families compared to investing more in each child. Therefore, the demographic transition towards smaller families in economies with initially high fertility and low per capita incomes may be stimulated by an initial growth in a population when population starts to climb, perhaps due to fall in mortality that may both reduce fertility and raise the accumulation of human capital. Conclusion. With a few notable exceptions, economists, along with others, have believed that greater population lower per capita incomes through diminishing returns. However, there is little empirical evidence that higher population in more developed economies reduce per capita incomes. Our analysis incorporates positive as well as negative effects of population on productivity. Population may reduce productivity because of traditional diminishing returns from more intensive use of land and other natural resources. However, largest population encourage greater specialization and increase investment in knowledge, mediated in part through bigger and more important cities. Therefore, the net relation between greater population and per capita incomes depends on whether that inducements of human capital and expansion of knowledge are stronger than diminishing returns to natural research. The potential importance of increasing returns to population in a world with rapidly growing population justifies and reconsideration of the relation between population and per capita incomes. That is the goal for the larger study that underlines our presentation in this paper.